Hi there, I'm Tom Spencer. This week on Central Texas Gardeners, celebrate cocktails, cooking, and other agave adventures with author Lucinda Hudson on her spirited tour of Viva Tequila. Continue the international connection with gardeners who blended Texas tough with history in a favorite neighborhood destination. Daphne answers your top question and makes her pick of the week. And on Backyard Basics, Eric Pedley shows how to propagate succulents. So let's get growing right here, right now.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.
What if your Texas transplants on a busy street corner in a yard that's been left to languish? See how this couple took on the challenge and created a neighborhood destination.
When Rob Moshine and Bob Atchison headed to Texas from California in 1992, planting themselves on foreign ground was a bit of a revelation. Their inherent creativity took root as they figured out Texas tough. With a passion for Italian art and history, they honored their new home after Gilbert and Lily Langtree.
Palazzo di Cani Neri, which is Italian for the Palace of the Black Dogs.
Their homesickness faded when they found the house of their dreams.
The house was built in 1927, and it's in the Spanish Revival style that was very popular in California at that time. It's very rare in Austin. There are only a few of them, and mostly in this neighborhood. The architect was Hugo Cuny, who was the first dean of the architecture school at UT, and that's when he built the house. For Ed Rather, who was the head of the co-op, the first head of the university co-op.
In the garden, they wrote a new chapter in its history.
The front yard was nothing.
Just grass with a magnolia
grass.
Tree.
Yeah, it was.
That's all, and this palm tree.
This palm tree, that
Just
magnolia
two things,
tree.
nothing else.
Grass, a broken up concrete walkway.
Since they're on a busy runway to the University of Texas at Austin, they wanted to gently corral its wide open spaces.
So we put the porticus in the front, this big arch, and then the one on the side to make it feel more like sort of an enclosed little paradise, sort of like a Persian or Moorish garden.
But we didn't want it totally screened off from the neighborhood. We still wanted the interaction of people walking by and people being able to see and share the flowers and, you know, just all the plants and everything as they walk by. So we very intentionally walked the line between privacy and sort of defining this as another room of the house, but not totally closing it off to the public and the passersby.
At the front door, they designed a courtyard for themselves and friends. Their water trough distracts from the hustle, either from work or from the roadway. To spill its symphony, they had cast in bronze copies of the 16th century merman at Rome's Piazza Navona.
People love it because you can see it from the street, you can hear it from the street. And the really cool thing is that we have toads that live in both of our fountains.
Houston brown toads.
Houston brown toads. And listen to this. Our next door neighbor would serenade our toads with a didgeridoo.
And she came out one night, and she and the
A
toad
duet.
were having a duet with one another in the garden. It was the most Austin
At
thing
night.
I've ever seen in my life. It's part of the reason why we keep the fountains full.
They live here too. The squirrels and the birds and the toads.
I take 5-gallon buckets and fill it with the shower water while I'm waiting for it to get hot to keep the fountains topped off, because I'm trying to be sensitive to, the drought restrictions, but we have the toads, so it's kind of like we kind of need to keep it full for them too.
Raised beds at the curb define their space and change the gradient view. Mainly, they're to grow the hardy roses and companions that Bob loves. By raising them up with well-drained soil over clay, they're trouble-free companions all year. They pull attention inwards with their statue of goddess Diana.
I've always been interested in Pompeian Herculaneum. It's been one of my passions all my life. So I wanted to have a Pompeian garden. And so we wanted to have a large statue out front, but we weren't sure what to get. And so we canvassed the neighborhood and showed them our ideas. One of the things about Diana, when we were going to put her up, is she's bare-breasted. And so one of the things we asked our neighbors, would you be offended if we had a statue like this in our front yard? And so we asked, and everyone said, no, this is the one we want, the one with the 2 dogs.
Our neighbors always would meet us and go, "Oh, you're the guys with the 2 black dogs." And so that one, having the 2 black dogs, it just kind of made the right choice.
They also attract attention with brilliant colors, including coleus and Magilla perilla.
I tried to used to have things like a white garden originally, and it was so boring. And now we mix wild colors together. We try to make it as colorful as possible because, again, the neighbors love it.
One good fortune of the house is the original ironwork crafted by Fortunat Weigel. In back, they retreat to their secret garden. Although the structure is original, Bob added the elements of an old Roman house. In one patio, Bob designed a new fountain rendered by Jeep Concannon of Concannon Studios before he passed away.
And it finally became this paradise. It was everything I always wanted. And last year, when it was so hot, I used to hate the Austin heat. But when it was so hot, coming out here just makes me feel so wonderful. So I'm out here in the garden like hours every day, just when it's 100 degrees, loving it. And I never thought that would happen.
I do the same thing every afternoon. I come out about 5 o'clock with the dogs and a glass of wine, and we hang out for an hour and a half or 2, till dinner time, just to be out here.
Some people were walking by our house one day and asked us, they said, "You must know the people from Downton Abbey." And so I was joking around and said, "This is Bobton Abbey," since my name is Bob. And I thought, we tell these stories to people. Who knows what stories people will be telling about our house 100 years from now.
The funniest one was the fellow who came here to deliver something and actually thought it was an Italian restaurant.
Asked for the menu.
And he
Wanted to see the menu.
He said, "What kind of food do you make? Can I see the menu?"
A couple of days ago, a couple with their 2 children were walking by, and this little girl was going, "Daddy, Daddy, I want to see the statue." And so she came dancing down the path to see Diana with the 2 dogs. She wanted to touch her. And so goes, "Daddy, Daddy, they live in a castle. I feel like a princess."
Well, from That's Amore to Viva Mexico, we are now joined by Lucinda Hudson, and thanks so much for being back on Central Texas Gardener,
Oh, it's Lucinda. So good to be with you again. It's been too long.
And we are here, speaking of Viva, to celebrate the release of your new book, Viva Tequila.
Yes.
And this is very exciting for me. I will admit to being a fan of all things tequila, whether it's the plants, the agaves, or the final product.
Yes.
And the book is beautiful, filled with history, recipes, lots of things that people can really dive into.
And maybe wouldn't think of the subtitle of the book is Cocktails, Cooking, and Other Agave Adventures.
Right.
And so in this book, I'm really telling the stories of what it was like 30 years ago to travel alone, most of the time on a bus, into these little villages.
Right.
So it's really, I'm so excited that I get to tell those stories and preserve heritage, culture, traditions, drinks.
Right.
It's really fun.
And, a lot of people don't realize that tequila comes from a long history of drink traditions within Mexican culture, and that it is as distinctive in its own way as the great wine culture is in, say, a country like France.
Oh, you bet. And the thing about this book, I get into the 3 agave spirits, pulque, mezcal, and tequila. So we're really talking of so many you know, since the ancient Aztecs who first drank pulque.
Right.
And pulque comes from a different species of agave
Right.
where they actually scrape out the heart of the living plant, and this agua miel, this honey water, comes up that is then only fermented and becomes a mild-like beer.
Right.
But tequila comes from only one species, the blue agave,
Right.
and its sister drinks, these are distilled spirits,
Right.
mezcal, comes from 28 different types of mezcal, or mezcal meaning the plant,
Right.
mezcal and maguey and agave are synonymous.
Right, right.
So, you know, we've had this tradition going, and it's interesting because they say that the Spanish brought the art of distillation from the Moors, but there's new evidence that the pre-Hispanics were distilling in Mexico, which is really exciting.
And there's so many fun facts associated with this. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that in ancient Aztec culture, their religion forbade people to drink until they got to be older, and then it required them to drink.
Well, there were certain calendar days. I mean, it is so mystical and spiritual, but then nursing mothers and children got to drink pulque because it was so highly nutritive. And there's been a demise of pulque, although it's coming back in style, but it was replaced by soda pop and cheap beer and aguardiente.
Yeah.
So we're missing a real nutritive value from pulque. But all the young people in Mexico are starting to go back to their roots and wanting to drink
Interested,
things. Yes.
The kind of renaissance, if you will,
Yes.
of tequila has gotten everybody interested in this.
Yes, I think that that's really true. And many tequila aficionados are going back to mezcal because many think it's more natural and made from different species of agave and more flavor. And, you know, it has that smoky, wonderful flavor
Yes.
because the agaves used to make mezcal are usually baked underground in ovens like the Indians used to do, whereas tequila, the heart of the agave here, is baked in above ground ovens.
Right. So that's something that a lot of people don't understand is that
Yes.
with both the mezcal and the tequila, they would remove the foliage from the agave, and it comes
Yes.
down to this, what you call the piña, which looks like a pine
It
cone.
looks
and
like
you have
the pineapple
you have,
on the top of this bottle.
Right, and then it's roasted.
Yes, and when they whack off those leaves with the machete so fast, and then it looks like a big pineapple, but it looks like a jicama. It's white and caustic inside. It'll break you out if you taste it, which I
Right.
did. And then it's baked in the ovens, and what comes out of the oven resembles mushy sweet potatoes drenched in molasses. It is so sweet. This transformation is
Sounds pretty
amazing. And then they crush it, ferment it, a lot of fibers, and then it's distilled into a clear white spirit.
Right.
Isn't that
It
amazing?
is kind of amazing, just the process, and you think
Yes.
about how they came to that process over
Yes.
probably centuries.
Well, there was a story that lightning struck the plant, cooked the piña, the rodents or the farmer's wife tasted it and got a little high, you know, and so that's how they decided, yeah. But it's like chocolate and vanilla. How did they ever figure that these pods needed to be fermented
Sure.
and to give us this gift of Mexico?
Right. I love all the folklore associated with it. I think it's really
Yeah.
charming. There's some traditional things that you've brought along now. There's a flask there that has some writing on it. Tell me about that
The
flask.
flask is for after you've had a little bit too much, and it says, para mal de cruda, aquí está la cura. For a bad hangover, here's the cure, more.
More.
But I
Right.
also brought these cow horns, which I really love. This was the original shot glass
Okay.
because you couldn't put it down. And the international symbol of drinking is this, so
Right.
you have to drink this down.
Right.
Although the premise of Viva Tequila is to sip and savor these magical spirits and not
Exactly.
chug them down.
Right, and that's one of the things that Americans had gotten in their heads was that tequila was something to endure
Yeah.
and to knock back and
Hello.
then bury the flavor if you could.
Yes.
And I think of
And
tequila
salt and lime.
and right, and I think of tequila as a fine aperitif, something to have after dinner and sip on and linger over.
Well, it doesn't have to be after dinner. The other night
Sure.
we had a wonderful Mexican meal and sipped mezcal slowly through the meal. So I think that's the whole thing. These are craft spirits, it takes the agave 12 years to grow, whereas grapes and grain are harvested in one season.
Sure.
It takes this plant 12 years before it can even be harvested. So, you know, it's quite a process. And how many spirits? We have 4 categories in tequila. We have blanco, unaged, reposado, lightly aged, añejo, deeper age, and extra añejo. So any of these spirits could be use silver in place of vodka or gin, the reposado to sip, the age like, you know, scotch, cognac, or brandy. So there's just so much versatility and excitement for drinking and cooking with tequila.
Right. And just as in Europe, they're very particular about the appellation.
Yes.
And the same is true in tequila. It very specifically comes from a very specific region in Mexico, and there's a very strenuous certification process.
Yes, like cognac or champagne.
Right.
Mezcal can be produced, legally, I guess I should say, in about 10 states, but about 18 states produce it. But tequila only comes from five states.
Right.
And there are strict rules and government regulation. But, as you know, what we're finding now, it seems to me, are more bottles than, you know, beautiful. Some of them are pretty not so beautiful, but lots of bottles.
Right.
And I worry about, I want to taste what's inside, not just see,
This
you know,
beautiful
see the
bottle.
bottles.
Right.
But think of with these 4 styles of tequila, like the silver tequila is great with fruits and salsas and gazpacho, and the reposado is great for chilies and soups and stews and sautés and flambés. And then you have the añejo, almost like a cognac for desserts, to sip in a snifter, but to use as a flavoring.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
I'm an añejo man
Are
myself.
you?
Yes.
And see, I love this silver, bright white spirit where you taste that agave, or the reposado, which is the most popular tequila in Mexico. But you're more of a brown spirit person, and you know.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you've also brought this charming a little drink here, and tell us what this is.
Sangrita.
Okay.
And sangrita, if you're in Jalisco, the heartland of tequila, if you order a shot of tequila, the sangrita always comes to the table, whether you ask for it or not. And like so many drinks today, I think they've taken shortcuts and you get more of a Bloody Mary mix. But the traditional sangrita that I celebrate in my book is fresh orange juice, lime juice, pomegranate juice, and chili sauce. No tomato in it.
That sounds
so it's the
good.
quintessential chaser. It piques every taste bud.
Right.
And so in Viva Tequila, I'm trying to preserve more of these wonderful traditional drinks, punches, fun ways in which the Mexicans drink their tequila with a lot of fresh fruit juice, chilies, things like that, as opposed to many of the mixology drinks today that have all these European liqueurs and syrups and this and that. I'm trying to be a little more like the Mexicans drink their tequila. Yes.
A little more traditional.
Yes.
And that's the focus of the book, is celebrating this really rich culture
gosh.
that has grown up around these plants and these particular drinks.
Yes.
And lots of recipes as well.
Yes, the book is very easily divided into 3 chapters. The first part's all about the plant, tequila, pulque, mezcal. Then there's the tequila cantina and the tequila cocina. So we have lots of drinks and food. And the recipes are kind of a fiesta in themselves. They're when you want to really treat people and do something fun and festive. These are fiesta recipes.
And tequila is an essential ingredient in many of these things.
And singing canciones, and I give hints.
There are a lot of songs about this.
Hints for music and music to play, and so. And then the book is also peppered with dichos. For instance, salud, dinero y amor y bastante tiempo para gozarlos.
All right. Well, Lucinda, thank you so much for coming on and enlightening up the studio with us today. It's always a pleasure to visit with you. Congratulations. I know this is a labor of love. Viva Tequila. Coming up next is our friend Daphne.
Hi, I'm Daphne Richards. Our question this week is about some damage occurring on a macho mocha mangave. You'll see some insects in this photo, so we consulted Extension's fabulous integrated pest management agent, Wizzy Brown. She identified the insects as Yucca bugs and Largus bugs, but says that the bulk of the damage here was actually caused by snails. The offending insects feed by sucking plant juices, so the darkened spots are resulting the damage from their feeding those Largus bugs. But the larger holes were actually caused when the leaves were very young and closer to the surface of the soil, where snails can easily get at them, having a virtual buffet of tender new growth. I've noticed similar damage on the leaves of amaryllis, daffodils, calla lilies, and other plants. They also love fruit, those snails do, that is close to the ground. So you should take extra precautions to protect your strawberries. Snails can be tricky. They hide out in the cool, moist air under the leaves of your plant during the day, and you don't even think to look for them until the damage is done. The old remedy of beer in a tuna can or other small, shallow dish does indeed work very well, since the snails are attracted to the carbohydrates and fall in but can't get out. But the first step in managing snails and slugs is to find and remove as many as possible. Dig around in the soil or mulch near the base of your plant and in shady areas of your garden. In early morning, when it's light out but not sunny yet or cloudy, cool mornings, those are the best times to find snails and slugs, since they'll be out feeding at this time and will be easier to find. Another great way to capture these pests is to put a board in your garden, right on top of the soil or mulch. Snails will hide under the board, making them easier to catch during the day. If you have a particularly bad infestation and are considering using snail bait, read the label very carefully. The active ingredient in most of these products is highly toxic to dogs and cats and should be avoided if at all possible. Good cultural control really is the best method. Our plant this week is Kufia. We love both bat-faced Kufia and the Kufia cultivar David variety. These plants thrive in full sun, but also do quite well in part shade, requiring very little supplemental irrigation. A planting with very well-drained soil in that area would be best, since these Kufias are sensitive to being overwatered, so clay soil areas should be avoided. Or you could build berms or raised beds for extra drainage, amending the soil with decomposed granite. Bees and butterflies love this plant and will flock to the flowers all summer long. David variety has red to orange-red flowers, while Batface has a combination of red with dark purple centers. In warmer winters, Kufia will be evergreen, but may be deciduous or perennial in cooler areas. Hardy to Zone 8, our zone here in Central Texas, you'll definitely need to protect them if we get down below about 10 degrees. We'd love to hear from you, so please visit klru.org/CTG to send us your questions or plants of the week from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with Eric Pedley for Backyard Basics.
Hi there, I'm Eric Pedley from East Austin Succulents, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about propagation of succulents. I'm going to be talking about division and cuttings. Now, division is by far the easiest way to propagate your succulents. Here I have a variegated aloe vera that's a little confined in this pot, so I'm going to split it up, and it's very simple. I'm just going to divide this, get rid of the dirt, try and keep as many of the roots as possible. I'm going to set these guys aside and simply get this guy in a new pot with good, fresh, clean dirt that's well draining, and there we go, piece of cake. I'm going to leave a little bit of space so that it can collect some water there. Here we have another plant, a little agave, that I'd like to divide. Now, after I divide these, I want to let them dry out for a few days. And you can do the same thing in your yard. When you split up the big agaves at your house, you can let those just lay on the ground for a few days and then plant them. You just created a real large wound, and that plant can rot if it sucks up too much bacteria or water. So you want to let agaves dry out a little bit. Here we have a plant that I don't want to divide yet. This is a very nice plant, and it's so variegated that there's not very much chlorophyll in each of those little babies. So I want to wait until those are at least 1/3 the size of the mother plant, and then I can go ahead and divide those so that they have a better chance. Another great method of propagating is by cuttings. And here you can see a plant that I cut a little while ago, and it's branched several times. So that's a great way to make several more plants, and I can give those away to my neighbors so that they don't hate me for playing loud music all the time, or I can just make more plants for myself. I'm just going to make a nice cut so that I have at least an inch or so where this can set out some new roots. Now, this is kind of a treasure of a plant, so what I'm going to do with this is just stick it in perlite for a little while. I'm just going to let that dry out for a couple days. I could just set it on its side, but I might get the plant to be a little bit misshapen if it sits for too long. So perlite is a great way to leave your plants sterile and have your cuttings have good success rate. Now, a plant that I don't really need to have too much callus time is an ice plant. I can just cut these very easily and stick them. Just cut them and stick them. Same with sedum. I'm never worried about these rotting on me, so I'll just cut these and stick these all around the yard. And you want to keep your cuttings moist. Just like kids, they can't drink as much as adults, so you just want to keep your cuttings moist every once in a while and not water thoroughly like your adult plants. Now here's an arrangement that is so old and overgrown. What I want to do is just cut this guy up, and I can make him clean and nice again like this arrangement I have here. Here's another great kalanchoe that I've cut several times, and now it's branched and bushy, and I've taken all those cuttings, and after a while those cuttings will set out nice roots and be a great plant that will go on forever. With Backyard Basics, I'm Eric Pedley.
Find out more at klru.org/CTG and check us out on Facebook. Next week, keep the kids busy this summer with fun wildlife projects for the kid in us all. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online and follow CTG's blog. Check out klru.org/CTG.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.